Now, welcome back. We're joined in the studio here by Kennedy Mandaza, who is ZanuPF spokesperson in South Africa, to my right. And furthest to my right is Dr. Bhekithemba Mpofu, who is the MDC Deputy Secretary, Information and Publicity. And joining us on Skype is political analyst Dr. Ibbo Mandaza. A very good evening to you all, and thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps let me start with Dr. Mandaza to just find out from him his thoughts about the recent binationals and the talk about what the economic challenges are in Zimbabwe. I heard Nelson Chamisa saying the problem is not economics, but it is the politics. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Well, it's both, actually. It's both political and economic.
So what do you think then should be the reforms on both sides?
Precisely. So far, it's clear that the Zimbabwean state is incapable of reform, neither politically nor economically. And this explains the trajectory that the country has moved, certainly over the last 20 years, but more significantly the last 2 years. It explains the coup. It explains where we are right now.
When you say incapable of reform, is it because the political players remain the same, therefore the systems as well?
Yeah, precisely. I think basically I think a former minister in the previous administration said that it's naive to expect us to reform ourselves out of power, which means that really if they were able to reform, they would simply be out of power. So there's a gridlock. The convictions are so enormous that it appears to us that what's required is a whole entirely new political dispensation in which there is, first and foremost, resolution of the current problems that confront the country politically. For example, given what has happened over the last year, the expectation that the economic reform program will take place on the back of some international re-engagement, that has come to naught, mainly because of the nature of the process attending to the elections, and more significantly, the killings on the 1st of August, and more recently in January, including the reports of rape, abductions, harassment of the opposition. So we find that the powers that govern our globe and those which the Zimbabwean government, since the coup, has been trying to engage under the mantra of open for business, have simply disengaged. And they are saying until there is a political reforms and economic reforms, there is neither engagement nor clear lines.
All right. Kennedy Mandaza, what are your thoughts on this? We've seen Europe saying, even though they were considering removing sanctions, saying that they really think that they need to extend them because of those killings, those reported rapes that Dr. Mandaza speaks about. Your response to this, that Zimbabwe can't go anywhere until there is a change of leadership and therefore a change of the systems?
Thank you so much. Zimbabwe has held its elections last year, and we came up with the current leadership that we have in Zimbabwe. And this current leadership should be given time to make sure that they put in place all the policies that they have promises to the people. And it is on that basis that I think that the European countries and any other friend that has interest in Zimbabwe should ensure that they have given time to the current leadership that we have. I think what happened earlier in January is premised on the disturbances that were taking place in the country. And at that time, we needed to ensure that there is peace, there is normalcy in the country. However, regrettably, there was loss of life. Yet the idea was to make sure that in order for us to move forward, there should be peace in the country, there should be unity in the country. That's why from the word go, the current president has said that he's prepared to listen to the people, he's prepared to engage and re-engage the people that are in the country and even those that are in
Mr.
outside the
Mandaza,
country.
and say those who are protesting were saying that they are engaging the government, they're not being heard by the government, and the problem is that it's the same minds that are resolving the continuing problems and thus the results that you had, the heavy-handedness. What is your response to that?
Admittedly, the people were trying to put a message to the government. The Constitution provides that people can engage the government in a manner that is peaceful. But we saw during this particular period the destruction of people, the people who were trying to violate other people's rights. We saw the barricading of people who wanted to do their normal business. However, the intervention by the police and the intervention by the soldiers did not seek to harm anyone, sought to restore order in the country.
So what is then your response to what eventually happened, the reported rapes and the brutality? When you say they didn't seek to, but then the end result was that, then what is your response, and where are the results of the investigations of who's responsible? The
investigations are currently going on. I think the president has called upon each and every individual who was harmed or raped or whatever happened during the course of this period to report to the law enforcement agents. And what we have heard is that there is only one case of an individual who has reported to the police. And even on an international platform, the president has said all those that felt that they were harmed during this particular period, the law enforcement agents are readily available to assist them.
Dr. Bhekithemba, Mpofu, there have been critics of yours as the MDC Alliance saying that you haven't exactly clothed yourself in glory yourselves, that you were agitators in an irresponsible way. And I know some of that criticism does come from ZanuPF, but from other circles as well. What responsibility do you take for the gridlock that Dr. Mandaza points to?
I think from our perspective, and at least from myself as well, is that you can't have for economic prosperity without political prosperity, so to speak. So I always think that the economics is part and parcel or an island of politics. And unless you solve the political issues that are in the country, it's unlikely that the politics will also be solved. Now, coming to what Dr. Mandaza said, that we are part of the gridlock, I disagree with that, because our president, Nelson Chamisa, was speaking earlier here, saying that we have opened our hands and say to ZanuPF, we are prepared to talk to them, we're prepared to solve the national crisis, but they have closed their door.
In fact, you've said that President Mnangagwa has not responded to your overture. Is that true? Just very quickly, Mr. Mandaza, is that true that the president has refused to respond to the overture made by the MDC?
It can't be true, and the world knows that the president...
It can't be, or it isn't?
It isn't true, because the president has called all political leaders, including MDC, to a national dialogue.
All right. Dr. Mpofu, you have refused to take part in the problem solving of the nation. Why?
We haven't refused. We have said that if we are going to have a sincere dialogue, it has to be mediated by an independent body. I think to have a player, we have a dispute, obviously. When we have a dispute, you have to have a mediator. To have one of the people, complainants, being part and parcel or chairing that particular dispute, I think is only but unfair.
Okay.
So that's where we're coming from.
Okay, so I want to go to Professor, to Dr. Mandaza in just a moment, but who would be an appropriate mediator? South Africa or somebody from the Northern Hemisphere?
We are happy with anyone who's not Zimbabwean, who's not been involved with the current government, and we've also extended that invitation to the President of South Africa, Ramaphosa, if he wants to, or the SADC chairperson. So anyone who's not currently involved in the day-to-day.
Dr. Mandaza, who would you believe is appropriate to mediate in this crisis? I've seen some critics saying that South Africa is once again mesmerized with the Zimbabwean crisis, which has a rather ominous tone to it.
Yes, I think South Africa has almost virtually disqualified itself as a possible impartial mediator. In fact, there are two extremes. One is the previous one, in which people would argue that Thabo Mbeki was too obtrusive, too one-sided in the 2008-2009. And then you have a situation where inadvertently or otherwise, Cyril Ramaphosa appears biased towards Mnangagwa. So I would say that a mediator must be found outside South Africa, possibly in the region, preferably the region, but also on the continent. And I'm sure we can find a mediator.
What qualities would they need to have to fit that bill? I'm just trying to think, if you say within the region, the AU and SADC, for instance, have said they agree with the lifting of sanctions against Zimbabwe. The targeted sanctions, which some have argued keeps the regime in line, so to speak, to institute reform. So who would be appropriate?
Well, on the formal level, neither AU nor SADC appear appropriate in this as mediators. Their position is much more formalistic. It ignores the realities of the ground. It is too diplomatic. It ignores the realities that we have had violence in the country. We have had human rights abuses. And to gloss all over that, as appears to have been the case on the part of South Africa in particular, means that they are not honest brokers. So, but you can still find individuals in the region. People, you ask the criteria. In my view, it must be somebody or somebodies who are familiar with the Zimbabwean terrain and who understand the nuances involved and can, working behind the scenes, engage both Mnangagwa and Chamisa as the main protagonists in this dispute.
Just a quick and final question, Dr. Mandaza. What would be the first port of call, just in terms of the minimum requirements of not only brokering a peace, but leaning on reforms that are viable?
Well, look, as I said earlier, that the current administration, going back to 2000, 2002, is incapable of reform. They are stuck. They have no capacity to turn this country around, none at all, as evidence there. And in fact, we are seeing the regime sliding down the radar. We need to accept that, first and foremost, not only as Zimbabweans, but also the region, instead of, in my view, puerile kind of subscriptions to notions of lifting of sanctions and so on and so forth. That's all nonsense, in my view. We need to confront the reality as it is, first and foremost.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibbo Mandaza, political analyst, speaking to us from Zimbabwe. Coming back to both of you, I think what Dr. Mandaza there was pointing to was the issue of legitimacy, which the MDC has sounded quite often when it judges the ZanuPF government. But I want to ask both of you this question. Is there a presence of dirty tricks. And I'd like you, Mr. Mandaza, to answer this question first, because there are those saying, those who are questioning the legitimacy of the MDC, especially Nelson Chamisa, going into Congress, it's because you are paying those to destabilize the leadership.
The question of legitimacy, I think, on our party does not arise at all. When elections were held, when MDC felt that it did not go well, they went to the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court was the arbiter in the disagreement that was there, and it came out that President Mnangagwa won, and as a result, he is the legitimate leader in the country. And as they go into their Congress MDC, yes, we are an interested party because we also play with them in the political arena. And as a result, whatever they do, we would also want to know. But to insinuate that at any given time we pay any people in MDC to choose a leader of their own choice, I don't think that is neither here nor there. What we do, we comment on the discourse that is currently going on in MDC, where we have seen instances where an individual who decides to take a position in the higher office is labeled ZanuPF. And this has been going on for a very long period of time. Anyone else who has felt disappointed in MDC and decided to do something else or leave MDC is labeled ZanuPF. We have heard Tendai Biti was labeled ZanuPF. We have had Welshman Ncube was labeled ZanuPF. Even the former deputy president, who is Thokozani Kupe, was also labeled ZanuPF. So who is MDC? If all of them, when they decide to leave...
Dr. Mpofu, it's a fair question. Who is regarded as MDC, given the fractures within the party that we saw going to the elections, given what some say are the continuing fractures going to Congress, a Congress which some see as being deliberately being delayed by Nelson Chamisa to protect himself?
The Congress wasn't delayed. In actual fact, it was brought forward. It was meant to be in October. We brought it forward to May. The reason being that we want to get it out of the way and continue our projects for nation building and ensuring that our party is stronger. I think most of what is going to happen during the Congress is not about positions. We've continuously said it's not about positions, but propositions.
But he spoke about jostling himself, so you can't say it's not about positions.
Yeah, well, ultimately the positions are going to be. There's going to be a change of positions in terms of some people getting in, some people coming out. But the main thrust of that particular Congress is to come up with propositions for the opposition to ensure that we become a stronger party going forward, and we've got a stronger leadership and a stronger constitution.
Because I want to go into the economics of things, but under what constitution? Some of your critics are saying since 1999 there has been a solid and firm constitution which was always available on the website, but since his entry into the helm of the MDC alliance, that has not been available. It would seem that he's trying to subvert those who are perhaps against what is an established constitution and overlooking the elders' advice.
I hope you're not saying Nelson is trying to do that, because that won't be factual. It won't be factual because the constitution was changed in 2014 at the Congress of 2014, and the Congress of 2014 also gave the National Council the right to hold a meeting as a council sitting as a Congress to change certain sections of the constitution. And because they couldn't change everything in 2014, most of the changes came after, which was in 2016. And that's where people possibly are mistaken on whether is this constitution in 2014 or 2016. And that's the reason. I don't want
to belabor the point because we've run out of time, because they are very clear that it is post that 2014 constitution and the changes that he himself has mooted. But I want to get into the economic reforms. Mr. Mandaza, you have continued to insist on the parity of the Zim bonds and the USD the US currency. You have insisted on increasing transactional tax, which some say is not working well for Zimbabwe, saying that it's negatively being received by the markets. And this is some of the challenges of lifting reforms, or rather sanctions, because of the lack of reforms.
Before I go into this one, let me just give one line. The reason why people are saying no positions in MDC, it is because they do not want to take away Nelson Chamisa. This is an elective Congress, and positions matter in this case. And when it comes to the issue of economics in the country, we have seen the transitional stabilization program that the minister has put in place, and this has already started reaping results, including the monetary policy that was put across a few weeks ago. It has indicated that there are quite a number of fundamental changes and improvements that have taken place in our economy. And one of the things that has resulted in an improvement in what the minister seeks to achieve is the 1% tax that has been levied on the money that is transacted electronically. And we would want to believe that through the transitional stabilization program, which seeks to achieve quick wins, we will be able to garner the kind of confidence that is needed in the economy from the people. The greatest disadvantage that we have had so far in trying to turn around the economy is the confidence level of the people.
And that's the whole point. Household affordability has not improved.
Yes, sure, you are right. The thing that we need to do, which is what the minister is doing, is trying to build the foundation by ensuring that those economic fundamentals that are needed in order for people to begin to realize food on the table need to be there first. And so this is what he's working on.
Dr. Mpofu, ZanuPF is saying it's important to build a foundation, so the people of Zimbabwe need to be patient, that after decades of strife, you have to give them a chance. What is your response to that?
It's all rhetoric. I mean, when they took over after the coup, Mnangagwa took over after the coup in December, he promised that in 100 days there will be changes. And then he said, no, let's wait for election. We've waited for elections. After elections, said, give me another 100 days. 100 days have passed. Nothing has happened. And now what we see is more shortages. As you know, the doctors have gone on strike now because they can't continue to be in hospitals when they can't treat patients.
So are you in short saying the transitional stabilization program is not working?
It's not going to work, and it's not working because we're seeing more shortages. That's why you're seeing now doctors actually striking today, this week, because they can't work under conditions where there's no medicine in hospitals. They are seeing patients dying, and they know that what the patient wants is a particular medicine, but they can't that medicine is not available to the doctor to provide.
So as a final word, are you going to be party to that political dialogue?
We are ready for dialogue. We've said it. Have you
communicated this to ZanuPF?
We've communicated this before, and we continue to communicate it. And I remember we wrote a letter at the beginning of February and said we are ready for dialogue, and these are the issues that we need addressed.
Is ZanuPF going to accept the MDC's questions that it will take part in the political dialogue, Mr. Mandaza?
President Mnangagwa and the government, his hands are wide open to receive anyone who would want to go into national dialogue. And it is premised on the basis of ensuring that national interest is put ahead.
So then we can
else.
accept here on African Perspective that the MDC and ZanuPF are going into that political dialogue. Thank you very much to Kennedy Mandaza, ZanuPF spokesperson in South Africa. Dr. Bhekithemba Mpofu is the MDC Deputy Secretary Information and Publicity. And we spoke earlier on to political analyst Dr. Ibbo Mandaza. Thank you to all of you for watching and joining us this evening. That's it for African Perspective this evening. Just a reminder that next week we'll be discussing aviation on the continent. Good night.